Welcome back to another Fifth Bridge Sports video. Today we're going to be talking about the NBA trade deadline and the implications that's going to have for the fantasy basketball season. Well, let's get it.
Before we jump right in, we have to introduce Meme of the Week. A lot of jokes that could be made. Runner-up was the Lakers and how bad they are. But the Mavs trade kind of topped it all. Porzingis basically went to the Wizards for nothing. Yeah.
You
wanted
out of here, Mavericks fan.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you might be wondering who the guy on the left is. Don't worry, we'll get right into it.
We'll get right into it.
Oh man.
All right. The big trade. The headliner. 76ers managed to trade Jesus out of their team. Ben Simmons. They think that man was worth everybody, but, they ended up giving away everybody for none other than James Harden. We believe James Harden just ran out of places to go in Brooklyn, is now taking on Philadelphia as his new venue. In return, Nets received Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Andre Drummond, which I believe is his seventh team in 3 years, and 2 second-round picks, which I think is good for the Nets because they've given a lot of their picks to get James Harden on that team. So they kind of got some of those back. One toxic thing, we're now having Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons in the same locker room. So I wish the best of luck to Steve Nash and a lot of patience to Kevin Durant because he's going to have to deal with them now.
Yeah, for fantasy basketball here, I think it'll be interesting to see. I think James Harden's going to, have really good value in Brooklyn. Although, unfortunately, he's already had really high value, so it's not really a guy you can pick up off the waivers. Ben Simmons maybe is, pick upable in some people's leagues. If he's been sitting on the wire, I think it's about time you consider looking at him. I imagine he debuts on Brooklyn pretty soon and should put up some pretty good numbers there. Andre Drummond could be interesting. I could see a situation where Andre Drummond becomes the starting center in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm.
I can see that too. I think it'll be interesting to see if Paul Millsap plays, what kind of value he can put up. I was looking into him. I know he's rostered nowhere. Maybe 1% now since this trade has gone down. In terms of Drummond kind of bouncing around, there was a time in fantasy ball where Drummond was I had him on my team once, and I remember he was putting up 50 fantasy points per game. But in order to do that, he had to be the number one option, and he just needed really high usage, which probably won't get on the Nets.
Yeah, although he is a rebounding monster. He could grab you 20 rebounds if he's your starting center, which we'll see. It's between him and LaMarcus Aldridge to who Steve Nash goes with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I think the 76ers won this trade personally. How do you boys feel?
I think I'm gonna go with Brooklyn. I think picking up Ben Simmons is just what they need. They already have the offensive firepower. Harden was kind of redundant with what they already had. Ben Simmons gives them defense, which that team was really struggling with. And then Seth Curry, great shooting. Andre Drummond, big depth. They gave up one player who's kind of not really necessary to the team success in my eyes, and pick up 3 more who increase the ceiling of what the group can accomplish.
It was a good trade all around. How about you, Patsy? What are you feeling?
I'd say Nets win.
Nets win.
Because we saw the playoff run, although Nets lost, but Kevin Durant was just able to piggyback the entire Nets, broken up Nets team, and just make it a very close game. So I agree with Aiden in saying that they traded off a piece that was not necessary to the Nets' success.
Mm-hmm.
And got some depth in return.
They did.
Yeah, whoever wins in the playoffs this season maybe is the real winner of this trade, but time will tell.
I think it'll be the I got the 76ers over the Nets for this season at least, going forward.
I mean, they got the best player in the trade. That's often a good sign.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right, so the next trade we got the Sacramento Kings and Indiana Pacers making a trade. I know Sacramento Kings fans are really sad to see Tyrese Halliburton go. I know there's a lot of screenshots coming from their Reddit of depressed Kings fans, but I think there is a lot of fans there who look on the bright side. You are getting Domantas Sabonis, but that is a really good pickup piece. I know it's tough to see Tyrese Halliburton go, someone who's a young player, rising star, is committed to your franchise. But yeah, for the fantasy relevance of this trade, Domantas Sabonis should continue to have similar value to what he was producing in Indiana. I think, someone like Tyrese Halliburton could maybe see a slight increase in Indiana. I think it's possible he's one of the main options there as the season goes towards the end of the regular season here. You guys have any thoughts on players here that you'd be looking at?
I think there's a lot going on in this trade, like especially fantasy wise. I actually have Jeremy Lamb on my team, and he recently he dropped 30 fantasy points. This was someone that was not even playing in Indiana, so he'll be interesting to watch. You're right. I see Sabonis being fairly similar. Holiday, I think Holiday's value goes down. It was already pretty low, but I think it takes a hit just being on the Kings.
So too. He had a role in Indiana, and I don't think he'll have something too much in Sacramento, but
For
especially
sure.
like Harrison Barnes being ahead of him there.
Yeah. Not on this list. I actually follow the Kings somewhat. Rashawn Holmes coming off the bench. That is tough.
Oh
That is tough.
yeah,
For anyone that has him rostered in their league, that's tough. He played 10 minutes.
that's hurting his fantasy value for the rest of the season for sure.
I'm not even sure if he would be worth an ad in our 20-person league at this point. On the Pacers, Halliburton's value could increase. He was actually doing pretty good on the Kings, especially with Fox out. But if Brogdon doesn't play, Halliburton is that guy, on their team right now.
Yeah, I'd be looking at Halliburton. I'd look at Chris Duarte as a pickup too. I know we've had talked about him in some waiver videos. He's their rookie this season, up and down kind of season so far, but I think it's going to be a Halliburton and Duarte kind of show.
Yeah,
those guys have some good numbers.
I was just looking at Duarte's stats, and his rostering actually went up by 12% since last week. We've talked about him in a waiver ads before, and he's on my team. He's been up and down, but overall, big picture fantasy value wise, he's been pretty good. So with Sabonis and other guys from Pacers going to the Kings, I feel like he's going to get a lot more minutes, a lot more opportunities to put up those points.
For sure. I think Tristan Thompson in this trade is irrelevant, as savage as that is to say. He's not.
Yeah, I don't see anything changing with Tristan Thompson. But yeah, let's move on to the next trade here. Batsy, I'll let you bring it in.
Oh, okay. This one's big. I drew the comparison of splitting Klay Thompson and Steph Curry. CJ McCollum to Pelicans is the biggest one. As Pelicans receive CJ McCollum, Larry Nance Jr., and Tony Snell. For Trailblazers, receiving Josh Hart, Thomas Satoransky, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which I think was a disappointment on my end. Didi Lazuda, first round and a second round pick. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I really thought that he was going to be a long-term depth player in the Pelicans. I saw him as a good rotational, good role player with potential starts in the future. But again, he can still do the same for Trailblazers. I just thought it would be good for the New Orleans franchise, but obviously they now have CJ McCollum, which is a significantly better player. McCollum going to Pelicans will be good for the Pelicans because they are a very young roster and they don't have that high performance experience as a squad. By that I mean they don't have playoff experience, they don't have experience of maintained good record. They are just barely making the play-ins, and as a squad they haven't performed high, and CJ McCollum has. He might bring that leadership to the Pelicans like Chris Paul did to the Suns, although that's just not a near comparison. But I feel like a similar effect can be expected with McCollum going to the Pelicans.
Yeah, I'll just put a bold prediction out here now. Pelicans are going to win the NBA Finals after this trade. Lock it in. You heard it here first.
Plus your bets.
Oh, could you imagine the odds on that? You put down $10, you win $1 million if the Pelicans take the whole thing. Just some insane numbers like that.
If you
but
make that bet, think about, hitting up your boys at Fifth Bridge Sports who,
Told you about that.
told you about this, revelation. But we'll talk about the fantasy value here. For CJ McCollum, he's been doing decent in Portland. I'd say now that he's on New Orleans, he's, maybe going to be the secondary scorer to Brandon Ingram instead of the main guy since Damian Lillard's been down. Still should have some good fantasy value. Larry Nance Jr. has had surgery, out for the season. Tony Snell, I don't think is worth rostering in most leagues at this point in time. Looking at the guys Portland's receiving here, Nikhil and Thomas Satoransky were directed to different teams. Thomas Satoransky, stay away from him in any league. Same with Didi Luzada. Those guys, probably aren't going to be touching the court too much. Josh Hart, I think he's, probably going to be starting next to Anthony Simons in the Portland backcourt right now. And Josh Hart's been having a really good fantasy season for the Pelicans so far. And I think you maybe see that increase right now because Portland doesn't really, with McCollum gone, they're kind of lacking that go-to scorer, and maybe Josh Hart can really step in and provide some good punch there. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, with him now going to Utah. Well, we have, a highlight of that trade later too, but I think, it's kind of hard to say what his role is going to be there. I kind of predict him to be kind of along a similar trend in value to where he was in New Orleans prior to the trade deadline.
yeah, like I agree with that. I can see Josh Hart's value going up. I can see his points potentially increasing because I know the Blazers right now are not that deep in terms of scoring. And then for McCollum, that one's interesting because he did put up solid numbers with Dame playing. So even if and he was the number 2 option there. So I think his value still takes a hit, but like marginally.
I think marginally, yeah. I think he had a little bit of a tough debut with New Orleans, but we'll let him write that one off. I think he can still average over like 20 points a game, and then whatever assists and rebounds he'll provide with it.
For sure. All right, we'll go on to the next one here.
Okay. This trade makes me mad. This trade is the Mavs attempting to recover from trading Seth Curry. Because why would you trade for Spencer Dinwiddie? Dinwiddie.
He was the one in our meme.
Bertans.
If any of you are wondering who he is, he was in our meme at the start of the thing.
He's the meme. Spencer Dinwiddie is the meme. Those two traded for Kristaps Porzingis and a second-round pick. Now, I don't care about the second-round pick, but Kristaps Porzingis came to the Mavs with 2 first-round picks to the Knicks, which, we know what those turned out to be. Now Kristaps Porzingis traded away to the Wizards for David Bertans, who I believe is rostered 3%, so he wouldn't even make our waiver ad videos. Spencer Dinwiddie, questionable. He's not even a proper shooting guard, and he is like 5'0" compared to a 7-footer power forward that you traded away. Fantasy value wise, Porzingis is going to benefit from this, and David Bertans might get some minutes because Mavs are they're pretty bad in their center position. The best guy they got is Maxi Kleber or Kleber, and he just shoots threes. He doesn't know how to play the paint, in my opinion. So if Bertans is that guy, he can give you some rebounds, some rebound points and fantasy value. That's all for me.
I think Davis Bertans does seem a climb. If his 3-point shot is reminiscent of it was in seasons past, I think he could be valuable to Dallas and have some good fantasy value. I'd say for now, I'd probably just put him on the keep an eye on him, but don't pick him up type of guy. But yeah, Spencer Dinwiddie. I mean, Dallas already has Jalen Brunson, and he's been having a really good season. So I'm not sure if they plan on starting those 2 guys next to each other. I think it'll be kind of interesting to see how that works out. But I mean, yeah, I'm not in love with where Spencer Dinwiddie's fantasy value is necessarily heading in this trade. All right. Well, I can move on to the next trade here. So we got the Hornets and the Wizards making a deal. So the Hornets are picking up Montrezl Harrell for Vernon Carey and Ish Smith. So Montrezl Harrell, I believe, is on an expiring deal at this point in time, and they're giving up not too much to get him. They're giving up their second-round pick and Vernon Carey and a vet and Ish Smith, who's been okay for them. But yeah, they've got a center who they really needed, so I'd expect Montrez to see an increase in fantasy value because Washington's had some complicated things going on with their center rotation that took a toll on his fantasy value. Now with the Hornets, it's kind of going to be between him and Mason Plumlee to see who's going to be kind of that guy and feeding the main the fantasy value. So I like Montrezl Harrell. I'd say he's trending up in value at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I see Harrell's value staying consistent. I don't see him being a starter. I see him coming off the bench. Now, whether he plays 30 minutes off the bench, like that could happen, but I see his fantasy value staying. Maybe going up slightly. I think Plumlee takes a hit, or, Plum Dog, Plum God, as he's referred to.
Dog.
Yeah,
Oh,
I was reading
man.
through his just what they say about him on Yahoo Fantasy, and I like those nicknames for him. So Plumlee might take a hit in terms of those terms of his fantasy value right now if his minutes go down, but he'll probably still be starting. And then the Wizards, this is where I think it's interesting. I think Ish Smith, I think his value goes up quite a bit
You
from
think
someone.
Smith goes up?
Yeah, I think Ish Smith
Didn't you
goes up.
pick this guy up and
I,
dropped him like 3-4 times? He's been dropped and added in our team like weekly, and I
he
hope
he might have. He
finds
was
something.
probably picked up when Charlotte had injuries to some of their starting guards,
Yeah,
and
Yeah.
because when given the opportunity, like he can go out there and he can put up like 10 points, 6-7 assists, a couple boards, steal. Like he can be that guy. Vernon
Yeah.
Carey, like I think is a center.
He is.
I think I picked him up once and he gave me like a negative fantasy point return. So stay away from Vernon.
Yeah, I think Vernon. I don't expect anything from him in this trade. Like Washington, they've got their center rotation solidified at this point. He's not going to find many minutes.
But their guard rotation is interesting. Like they have
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that they've got Kispert, KCP I guess, Neto, and Ish Smith. I believe that's it. I might be leaving somebody out, but there's not a lot of them.
Yeah, I guess there's a fair point. I guess there is that window for Ish Smith to. I mean, they need someone to start as like a primary ball handler next to Bradley Beal, and maybe Ish Smith could be that guy. We'll see.
Because I believe Holiday was traded actually. He was the go-to guy for a minute there, and then he got traded somewhere, which we might cover later in this video.
Yeah, it was a rough trade, but we'll move on to the next trade here.
Cavs.
So Cavaliers and Pacers. So Cavaliers make a nice ad by picking up Caris Levert and a second-round pick for the injured Ricky Rubio. They part ways with a first-round pick in a couple seconds, but yeah, with Colin Sexton being injured, they're kind of looking for a shooting guard to be next to Darius Garland in the backcourt. So Caris Levert will be a good plug-in guy for that team. If his fantasy value changes too much, I don't expect too much there. I'd say, guards outside of Darius Garland who are on the Cavaliers, maybe they're going to take a little bit of a hit with him coming in. Rubio's still injured for the rest of the season, obviously, so I hope you're not looking to add him at that point. But
Isn't it Rubio's third team this season or third team in the last 2 seasons?
He started with the Cavaliers this season, but yeah, he's played on a few different teams in the last couple of years.
Yeah, traded. Yeah, I think this is a pretty clear sign though. The Cavs, they're going for it.
They are. They've had a good season. I mean, one of the surprise teams of this season, really.
I think they have a shot actually. I think like the Cavs have a very real shot at like just taking the whole thing.
It's the Kevin Love factor.
I mean, yeah, they're a team to watch out for in the future. Honestly, I mean, they have a really young and talented group of guys. But yeah, let's jump on to this monster 4-team trade here.
This looks
so. Yeah, I mean, it's on the screen. I won't read out everything that's happening with this one. For fantasy value, though, I just noticed we had the Clippers and the Nets logo, so ignore that. That's our bad. But I'd say out of everyone here, I like Marvin Bagley's fantasy value the best in this group. I think in Detroit, he could have some really good value now. I think he's going to find a lot of minutes. They're going to try to see what they have in the former second overall pick. That they're, a team who has that luxury because they're out of the playoffs already. So because of that, I think he he really could benefit and play next to Cade Cunningham. So I'd look at Marvin Bagley if you're in a deeper league for sure. Other than that, I kind of like Serge Ibaka on the Bucks. I think they've kind of needed another big body. I think he could be interesting there. I would say, only if you're in a deep league, you maybe consider Serge. But yeah, and any other thoughts on this one, boys?
Yeah, outside of maybe Bagley, like I think the rest of these players are fairly deep league players, like
Yeah, neutral
DiVincenzo,
movement.
Josh Jackson, Trey Lyles.
Mm-hmm.
They're all coming off the bench, maybe, and the minutes distribution between them probably won't look too hot, so I'd avoid them. Rodney Hood, I'm surprised he is still in the league. I thought he was like a commentator or something. I don't know. It's good to see him still playing.
Oh man, he's been around. He's been around.
Yeah, he's still playing ball. The respect to him, though, that's big. Semi
Yeah,
Ojeleye.
Semi Ojeleye.
Wish I knew who that was.
I know he's on the Celtics for a while, but yeah.
Has he played?
Semi on the Celtics.
My bad. Has Semi played here at all? Does anyone know?
I don't think I think he's kind of been a bench guy for most of his career here. I think he plays okay defense and things like that. But yeah, well, let's jump to our next one here. So we got our trade between the Celtics and Rockets. So we have Dennis Schroeder on the move. We have Enes Freedom. I think he's getting waived by the Rockets, so he'll be someone to see where he goes in the buyout market. Bruno Fernando as well. He's a younger center. I wouldn't expect too much value from him on this team right now. I'm not really sure where the Rockets are going with Dennis Schroeder. I'd kind of expect his value to be nothing special because the Rockets do have Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green in the backcourt already. So maybe not most. Maybe Dennis Schroeder is a six-man unless he gets bought out on that team. Daniel Tice on the Celtics. I mean, yeah, he could be a rotational big on that team. I don't really love anyone for fantasy in this trade personally. Do you guys think there's anyone here?
This, I like, to be honest, I'm aware of this trade as of like 3 minutes ago. Daniel Tice back on the Celtics, which I think is funny. Dennis Schroeder having the most roller coaster 3 years. He was playing with Chris Paul in OKC. Next thing you know, he's with LeBron. Now he's just in the Rockets. Like, he's having a reverse Westbrook moment, in my opinion. He's just he's going around. I think in the Rockets, though, like I said this before, it'll be good for Dennis Schroeder if he chooses to stay and not sit on the bench to wait to be traded somewhere else. Because Rockets, we've said this in our multiple videos, they got nothing going on for them, and they'll whoever performs somehow will get the minutes and will do good. And Dennis Schroeder, I think he'll be like one of the best players on that team easily. So
yeah. It's tough to predict. It's tough to predict how it goes.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah, I'll jump to the next one here. So we got Blazers, Spurs, and Jazz three-way trade. This is a continuation of Nikhil from that first trade we saw earlier. So he's getting directed to the Jazz. You have Thomas Satoransky on the Spurs and Joe Ingles in a second to the Blazers here. I'd say outside of Nikhil in this trade, I'm not sure if anyone is really going to be worth looking at for fantasy. For Joe Ingles, I think on the Blazers, his value is looking like it kind of drops off a little bit, in my opinion. I think, the Blazers are looking like they're kind of trending towards maybe wanting to, finish the season with a losing record, get a good draft pick that helps them rebuild around Damian Lillard for next year is kind of what I think they're going towards. So I don't think, playing a 30-some-year-old Joe Ingles is kind of fitting in with that idea. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you there. I could see maybe Satoransky here getting some value. I believe he'd be coming off the bench on the Spurs.
I think so, yeah. I mean, probably behind DeJounte Murray potentially. They did part ways with Derek White and another trade coming up here too. So
yeah, I think that's actually gonna have some big fantasy implications. But in terms of the Jazz, like Hernan Gomez there, I believe he's a center. So he's gonna be playing behind Gobert, most likely Whiteside. So that's probably killing what little fantasy value he had.
Definitely.
Okay, move on to the next one. This one, me or you, Aiden?
This is all you.
It's all me. Okay, all right, boys. So we had Aaron Holiday get traded for cash, and it is as savage as it sounds. They moved him to save a little bit of money.
Yeah.
You know, they chased the bag, however you want to put it. That is how that trade went down. And Aaron Holiday on the Suns.
Good fantasy value on cash though. This.
Yeah,
If you could pick up cash in your league.
Yeah. That's how it is. Cash remains king, and that's what the Suns chose him. Maybe the Suns are worried about potential injuries they might face. They're definitely going to go on a decent run here. It's the only fantasy-wise, I think, Holiday does not have much value.
I'd say at this point in time, it's irrelevant. I don't think Aaron Holiday is going to be too big in that rotation unless someone gets injured. So
yeah,
just adding guard depth on the team for a playoff push.
For sure. Another trade that went down that actually does have some fantasy implications for maybe 14 to 16 teams and on would be this trade between the Suns and the Pacers. So Torrey Craig was moved for Jalen Smith and a second-round pick. Now, Torrey Craig going to the Suns, I think he'll turn into someone potentially better or as good as a Jay Crowder, that type of player. I could see him having that type of role. And on the Pacers, the addition of Jalen Smith, who I believe plays as a forward or a center, gets thrown into an already kind of confusing mix-up of centers with Turner, Isaiah Jackson, Goga, and now Jalen Smith. So who starts? Who comes off the bench?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
There's a lot of young bigs in that rotation, but I think Jalen Smith, his fantasy value could be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a former watery pick, so maybe Indiana's willing to give him a couple minutes to see how he'll do. So worth keeping an eye on Jalen Smith for sure.
Yeah, he has, I think, a pretty high ceiling if given the minutes. If, for example, Turner doesn't play, it looks like Isaiah Jackson went down today in the game. I don't know if that's long term, but he did just come back. He's out again now. Goga was, if you're a fan of the Pacers, you probably already know this, but he looked very bad out there today. I think they benched a starting player during the game.
And that's brutal.
So
he did not go.
He did not. He did not. So if you're I don't have more insight into that beyond the fact that he was not doing that well. They pulled him, and I don't even know. I think they might have been running with Jalen Smith or no center over Goga here. So that's what was going on in Indiana. Now this trade was of interest to me because I have Keldon Johnson. So the Celtics received the Celtics received Derek White, and they gave away Josh Richardson to the Spurs. So I think Derek White's value probably falls. Actually,
I'd say agree. I think Derek White's going to be the starting point guard in Boston.
I don't think so. I think they stick with Smart.
I don't know. I think I like Derek White. I mean, I think he could be the starter there. I mean, we'll see how it goes, but I could see them running Derek White, Smart, Brown, and Tatum. Having those four players being a starter and then some big. Derek White's good in San Antonio, so I think he's going to be a large part of the rotation in Boston.
I think he'll get the minutes for sure. I'm not saying he'll have a smaller role, but Derek White was, I think, the number 2 option on the Spurs.
I think it's
not going to be the number 2.
He's not going to be a number 2 scoring option for sure. So
yeah, if he manages to bring value somewhere else, maybe on the defensive side, he steps it up. Maybe grabs more boards. That remains to be seen.
More assists now that he has some better teammates around. Could be interesting there.
Right, Josh Richardson, I think actually had a role on the Celtics, so him getting traded, I think, drops his value.
Yeah, I don't really know where San Antonio is trying to go this season. I mean, we'll see how he does.
Yeah, but if you do have Keldon Johnson rostered, like I do, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but it's tough to it's tough to judge based on the one game that he played today. But he did put up 40 fantasy points, right after Derek White gets traded. So he got a few more shots. It looked like he was just getting, I don't know. It looks like he now steps into that number 2 role on that team,
Yeah, for sure.
which could really help you. The odds that he is available are probably not that high, but if he is, I'd say go pick him up. If you play in a league like that. Okay. And then I guess this was another trade that the Celtics pulled off. I think I might have seen a meme about this. I wasn't too aware of it, but the Celtics receive a second-round pick, and the Magic receive here Bol, Dozier, and a second-round pick and some more cash. So
Celtics are just trying to clear up some roster spaces and cash. For fantasy basketball, nothing here is going to affect anything.
yeah, that's tough. I remember, I think it was Shaq. He had a lot of very good words to say about Bol when he got drafted. I think Shaq would have taken Bol number 1. I believe that's what he said.
Well, Bol's an interesting player. I think we all want to see Bol succeed. Like if you saw some of his highlights from college or when he played with the Denver Nuggets in the early bubble when they had a lot of missing players, he can be a fun player to watch.
Yeah. Well, that's not much to say on that one.
Oh, yeah.
Next,
very neutral trade.
Yeah, very just irrelevant for fantasy ball, and
and the NBA.
Not much more to say on that. The next trade that went down, I guess is of interest to anyone that's Canadian, and cheers for the Raptors. So the Raptors got Thad Young, Drew Eubanks, and I think I saw a meme also about Eubanks getting waived the moment the Raptors got him. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Goran Dragic maybe is getting bought out as well here. We'll see how that goes, but
yeah, this was definitely one of the more. This one may have some fantasy relevance. Let's see how Thad Young does. I believe he's been quiet for most of the season. I haven't heard much about him. Haven't really looked into it. So,
yeah, he's been in and out of the rotation. I mean, he's not going to be a starter in Toronto by any means, but I think he does provide them with a good depth off the bench here.
Yeah.
On the season, he's been decent when he steps in, but at this point in time, is he worth rostering in most leagues? Probably not.
And Thad's what, a center? Forward?
Yeah, it's kind of power forward center.
Okay. Yeah, that makes Toronto's lineup a lot deeper, but in terms of fantasy value, definitely doesn't go up.
Yeah.
Dragic over here, his fantasy value is pretty low. I think he was drafted relatively high, but I don't think he plays much.
If Dragic gets bought out and gets signed to a team that's interesting, maybe his value will increase. But at this point in time, he's not worth having on your team.
I wouldn't be surprised if he announces retirement soon. And I'm not saying this as any sign of disrespect. He is old, so yeah.
That's fair too. Yeah, maybe he just doesn't want to move to another city, start off with a new team at this point in his career. He's kind of maybe done what he wants to do, but we'll see how it goes. Sure. But yeah, I mean that was a long video, boys. But to anyone who watched all of it, you guys are the real MVP. We appreciate y'all. If you made it to this point, we'd appreciate anyone who subscribes to the video. But yeah, comment down below if you think there's any big changes coming to fantasy after this hectic trade deadline. Otherwise, yeah, we'll see you guys in another video.
Stay safe.